He made jokes about her career ambitions, while colleagues awkwardly laughed at his cruel remarks. When she confidently walked in with 3 identical 2-year-old girls and DNA test results, his smug expression dissolved into complete shock. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now subscribe to the channel and let's get started. The late autumn rain pattered against the gleaming glass facade of the Reynolds Enterprises building, a 40-story monument to old Boston money that towered over the financial district. Inside the marble-floored lobby, Jasmine Washington sat behind the reception desk, her posture perfect despite the early hour, her MIT computer science textbook discreetly tucked beneath a stack of visitor passes. "Reynolds Enterprises, how may I direct your call?" she answered in the polished, accent-neutral tone that had taken months to perfect. Jasmine's eyes flicked to the digital clock on her monitor. 7:35. 25 minutes until her shift ended and she could race across town to her 9 o'clock advanced algorithms lecture. At 22, Jasmine was a study in careful time management. Each hour of her day was meticulously allocated. Morning reception work, afternoon classes, evening shifts at the campus library, and late nights studying in her dormitory. Sleep was a luxury she rationed with military precision. The elevator chimed and Jasmine instinctively straightened her simple black blazer, purchased from a thrift store but steam-pressed to crisp perfection. The lobby's atmosphere shifted subtly as Marcus Reynolds strode across the marble floor, his tailored Burberry coat dusted with raindrops, Italian leather shoes gleaming despite the weather. At 29, Marcus carried himself with the easy confidence of someone who had never questioned his place in the world. Third-generation Beacon Hill aristocracy, Harvard Business School legacy, heir apparent to the Reynolds financial empire, his future had been mapped before his birth. "Good morning, Mr. Reynolds," Jasmine said, her professional smile firmly in place. Unlike the other executives who barely acknowledged the reception staff, Marcus paused at her desk. His eyes, the particular shade of blue that came from generations of careful breeding, lingered on her face. "It's Jasmine, right?" His voice carried the faint trace of his finishing school elocution lessons. "Yes, sir. Jasmine Washington. You're new." "3 months now, sir." He nodded, seeming to actually see her. "You're different from our usual receptionists." Jasmine maintained her smile, though it tightened slightly at the corners. Different. She knew what that meant in a building where she was often the only black face on the entire floor. "I'm putting myself through MIT," she offered, a subtle reminder that she wasn't just a receptionist. Something sparked in Marcus's eyes. Surprise, perhaps even respect. "Computer science?" "Yes, specializing in optimization algorithms." He leaned slightly against her desk, a breach of the invisible barrier that typically separated executives from support staff. "I've always found technology fascinating. The future of finance lies in algorithmic trading." The conversation lasted precisely 3 minutes, but it altered the trajectory of Jasmine's life. Those 3 minutes became a coffee in the building's cafe the following week. The coffee became lunch at a discreet restaurant 2 blocks away. Lunch became drinks at a bar where no Reynolds associates would venture. "My family has certain expectations," Marcus explained one evening, his finger tracing the rim of his whiskey glass. "My father sits on the board of 7 Fortune 500 companies. My mother chairs 3 major charity foundations. The Reynolds name carries obligations." Jasmine understood the unspoken message. She was acceptable as a private diversion, not as a public companion. "I don't have expectations, Marcus," she replied, her voice steady. "I have goals. MIT isn't my final destination. It's my starting point." He smiled at that, raising his glass. To ambition, then. 1 month later, Marcus invited her to his penthouse in the Millennium Tower. The 60-story luxury residence offered panoramic views of Boston Harbor, the cityscape glittering like fallen stars. He opened a bottle of crystal champagne, the pop of the cork echoing against the floor-to-ceiling windows. "To us," he toasted, his eyes holding promises that his words carefully avoided. Their first kiss tasted of expensive champagne and calculated risk, the Boston skyline bearing silent witness to the beginning of what Jasmine allowed herself to believe might be love. For 3 months, they existed in a carefully compartmentalized arrangement. By day, she was the efficient receptionist who addressed him as Mr. Reynolds in the presence of others. By night, she was the woman who lay beside him in his California king bed, her textbooks sometimes spread across his imported Italian sheets as she studied while he took late calls with Asian markets. "You're brilliant," he told her once, watching her solve complex equations. "You could be exceptional if only—" He didn't finish the thought, but Jasmine heard the unspoken qualifier. If only she weren't from Roxbury, if only her skin were a different shade, if only her last name carried different weight. On a Tuesday in October, Jasmine stood in the employee restroom on the lobby level, staring at the plastic test stick in her trembling hand. 2 pink lines. Unmistakable. She took 3 deep breaths, each one shallower than the last, and carefully wrapped the test in toilet paper before burying it deep in the trash. 3 days later, she sat in a community health clinic, the paper gown crinkling as the technician moved the ultrasound wand across her still flat abdomen. "Wait, I'm seeing—" "Hold on," the technician murmured, adjusting the angle. "Ms. Washington, I'm detecting multiple heartbeats. 1, 2, 3 distinct heartbeats." "3?" Jasmine whispered, the room suddenly spinning around her. "Yes, you're carrying triplets." That evening, Jasmine rehearsed her speech a dozen times on the elevator ride to Marcus's penthouse. She had calculated various scenarios, prepared for multiple reactions. She had not, however, prepared for what actually happened. Marcus was at his desk when she arrived, reviewing quarterly projections on dual monitors. He smiled when she entered, but it faded when he saw her expression. "Is everything all right?" he asked, closing his laptop. "I need to tell you something important," Jasmine said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm pregnant." The silence that followed was absolute, as if all sound had been sucked from the room. Marcus's expression shifted from shock to disbelief to something colder. "That's unexpected," he finally said, his voice carefully modulated. "How did this happen? We were careful." "Apparently not careful enough." Jasmine took a deep breath. "There's more. It's triplets." For a moment, Marcus stared at her as if she were speaking a language he couldn't comprehend. Then something terrible happened. He laughed, not a laugh of joy or even nervous surprise, but a cold, dismissive sound that cut through the air like a blade. "Triplets? That's absurd!" He stood, walking to the window that overlooked the harbor. "This isn't happening. It can't." "It is happening, Marcus. I've seen the ultrasound." He turned to face her, his expression now composed, almost corporate. "Jasmine, be reasonable. You're a receptionist. I'm next in line to lead one of Boston's oldest financial institutions. 3 babies don't fit into that equation." "They're not an equation," Jasmine replied, her voice hardening. "There are children." "Children?" His laugh was sharper now. "A receptionist pregnant with triplets? You think that fits into my 5-year plan for Wall Street?" The words hit Jasmine like physical blows. I thought we meant something to each other." Marcus's expression softened briefly, a calculated shift that didn't reach his eyes. "Jasmine, you're pleasant. You're intelligent for your background. But let's be honest. You'll never be more than that girl from the poor neighborhood. No ambition, no class, no place in my world." He walked to his mahogany desk and pulled open the top drawer, removing a checkbook bound in fine leather. With his Mont Blanc pen, he wrote deliberately, then tore the check free and slid it across the polished surface. "This should resolve our little problem. There are discreet clinics in Providence." Jasmine stared at the check, unable to touch it. "They're not triplets, Marcus. The doctor detected 3 heartbeats. They're triplet girls." His face hardened. "All the more reason to end this now. 3 bastards aren't part of my 5-year plan." "How can you be so cold?" Jasmine whispered, tears finally breaking free. "These are your daughters." "They're a mistake," he replied, his voice clinical. "One that can be corrected." When Jasmine made no move to take the check, Marcus sighed as if dealing with a particularly difficult client. He picked up his phone and pressed a button. "Security, please come to the penthouse. I need an escort for a visitor." "Marcus, please," Jasmine begged, her composure crumbling. "We need to discuss this like adults. I'm not asking for marriage, just support." "The discussion is over," he said, turning back to his laptop. "The check is my final offer." 2 minutes later, a security guard appeared at the door. Marcus didn't look up from his screen as he said, "Please escort Ms. Washington out and ensure her badge is deactivated. She no longer works here." The guard, embarrassed but professional, gestured toward the elevator. "Ma'am, please." As Jasmine gathered her coat, Marcus spoke one last time, still not looking at her. "I've been generous, Jasmine. Don't make this difficult." The elevator descent from the 60th floor to the lobby felt eternal. When the doors opened, Jasmine stepped into a different world than the one she'd entered just 30 minutes earlier. Outside, what had been rain earlier was now heavy snow, unusual for October. "Miss, you can't wait in the lobby," the night security guard informed her apologetically. "Building policy." At 3 in the morning, Jasmine stood on the freezing sidewalk outside the Millennium Tower, her thin receptionist's blazer no match for the biting cold. No taxis passed in the storm. The MBTA had stopped running hours ago. The check Marcus had forced into her purse caught a gust of wind and sailed away, disappearing into the swirling snow of Boston Harbor. Wrapping her arms protectively around her still flat stomach, Jasmine made a vow to the 3 tiny lives within her, her words carried away by the howling wind. "My daughters, I promise you will never know the rejection I have known. I promise I will turn every cruel word into a stepping stone for our success. Marcus Reynolds said I would never be anything. I'll prove him wrong about everything." As snowflakes melted on her face, mixing with tears, Jasmine couldn't possibly imagine that in 14 years she would be standing on a stage accepting an innovation award, commanding a technological empire that would make Reynolds Enterprises look obsolete by comparison. The snowflakes melted against Jasmine's face as she stood shivering outside the Millennium Tower, her thin blazer offering no protection against Boston's unexpected October storm. Her phone showed 3:15 in the morning, no buses, no trains, and her dormitory was miles away. She had exactly $27 in her wallet, not nearly enough for a hotel room. "One step at a time," she whispered to herself, rubbing her stomach instinctively. Spotting an all-night diner 3 blocks away, she trudged through the accumulating snow, her sensible office shoes soaking through with each step. The warmth of Rosie's diner enveloped her as she slipped into a back booth. A waitress with tired eyes approached, notepad in hand. "Just coffee, please," Jasmine said. "And may I sit here for a while?" The waitress, Dolores, according to her name tag, glanced at Jasmine's drenched clothes and reddened eyes. "Honey, you look like you could use something stronger than coffee. Kitchen's still open for another hour." 20 minutes later, Jasmine had consumed a bowl of chicken soup and 2 pieces of toast, the first food she'd had since lunch the previous day. She stared at her reflection in the diner window, watching snow accumulate on the street outside while silently calculating her next move. By 6 in the morning, she had made it back to her dormitory at MIT. Her roommate, Sophie, was still asleep when Jasmine quietly gathered her shower supplies and a change of clothes. In the communal bathroom, under the harsh fluorescent lighting, she finally allowed herself to cry. Silent, efficient tears that lasted exactly 3 minutes before she shut them off completely. Classes that day passed in a blur. When her advanced algorithms professor asked why she'd missed the previous day's lecture, Jasmine fabricated a story about food poisoning. No one questioned the dark circles under her eyes or her unusual quietness. That evening, she sent an email to the Reynolds Enterprises HR department inquiring about her final paycheck and received an automated response stating that her employment had been terminated for violation of company policy. No further explanation, no severance, not even the courtesy of specifying which policy she had supposedly violated. 2 weeks later, Jasmine sat in a sterile office at MIT's administration building facing Dean Richardson, whose expression conveyed both sympathy and firmness. "Ms. Washington, I understand your situation is difficult, but the university's housing policy is clear. Dormitories are not appropriate accommodations for expectant mothers, particularly in a high-risk pregnancy." "I'm only in my first trimester," Jasmine argued, hands clasped tightly in her lap. "The babies won't arrive until spring. I can complete this semester and—" "The decision isn't up for negotiation," the dean interrupted gently. "For insurance and liability reasons, we must ask you to vacate university housing by the end of the month. We can offer to defer your enrollment for up to 1 year, with guaranteed readmission." Outside, November wind scattered brittle leaves across the campus quad as Jasmine exited the administration building, a folder of housing referrals clutched in her hand. None of the suggested options were affordable on her savings, which had been depleted by the first prenatal appointment. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. "Dean called me. This is bullshit. My aunt has a basement apartment in Dorchester. Not fancy, but private entrance. Call her?" 3 days later, Jasmine stood in the doorway of a converted basement with low ceilings and a single window that provided a ground-level view of a small backyard. The space smelled of laundry detergent and old carpet, but it was clean and, most importantly, within her budget. "It's not much," Sophie's Aunt Barbara apologized, "but the heat works, and the neighborhood's decent. I'll only charge you utilities until you find your feet." Jasmine set down her single suitcase, forcing a smile. "It's perfect. Thank you." That night, lying on a borrowed futon beneath a water-stained ceiling, Jasmine opened her laptop and created a spreadsheet. In one column, she listed her assets: $8,243 in savings, a partial scholarship that would be preserved during deferment, and a used laptop. In the second column, she listed immediate needs: prenatal care, housing, food, utilities. In the third column, she calculated the costs of having 3 newborns: cribs, formula, diapers, medical expenses. The numbers didn't add up, not even close. The next morning, she began her job search. Her first interview was at Rosie's Diner, where Dolores recognized her immediately. "Can you start tomorrow?" she asked after a brief interview. "Morning shift, 6 to 2. Tips are decent if you're quick." "I can start today," Jasmine replied. By December, Jasmine had established a grueling routine. She woke at 5:30 each morning to serve breakfast and lunch at Rosie's, took the bus directly to a medical transcription company where she worked from 3 to 11 at night, and returned to her basement apartment to study MIT course materials for next semester's return, determined not to fall behind. She slept 4 hours per night, ate whatever Dolores could spare from the diner, and spent Sundays doing laundry and preparing for the week ahead. Her first trimester nausea was compounded by exhaustion, but she permitted herself no complaints, no breakdowns. "Each day is one step closer," she told her growing belly in the quiet moments before sleep. "We'll get there." In her 16th week, Jasmine scheduled an anomaly scan at a community health center that offered sliding scale fees. The waiting room was crowded with women in various stages of pregnancy, many clearly in circumstances similar to her own. "Washington?" a nurse called, leading her to an examination room where a technician waited with the ultrasound machine. "This gel will feel cold," the technician warned, applying the clear substance to Jasmine's now visible baby bump. As the wand moved across her abdomen, 3 distinct shapes appeared on the screen. "Would you like to know the sex?" the technician asked. "Yes," Jasmine whispered. 3 healthy girls, identical. That evening, Jasmine worked her transcription shift with renewed focus, her mind racing. 3 girls would need 3 of everything: the basement apartment, barely adequate for one, would be impossible for four. The spreadsheet columns in her mind grew more daunting with each passing hour. By her 24th week, Jasmine's body was sending clear warnings. Her ankles swelled painfully after each diner shift. Braxton Hicks' contractions interrupted her sleep. Dark spots occasionally danced across her vision when she stood too quickly. During a routine checkup, the nurse took her blood pressure twice, frowning. "The doctor will want to see you," she said, exiting quickly. Dr. Elaine Chen, a petite woman with kind eyes behind fashionable glasses, studied Jasmine's chart with growing concern. "Your blood pressure is dangerously elevated and you're showing signs of early preeclampsia," she explained. "This is serious in any pregnancy, but with triplets we need to be extremely cautious. You need bed rest." Jasmine shook her head. "I can't stop working. I have bills, rent." "Ms. Washington," Dr. Chen interrupted. "If you don't reduce your stress and rest, you risk seizures, placental abruption, or premature labor. None of those bills will matter if you and your babies don't survive." As if to emphasize the doctor's point, Jasmine's vision blurred, the examination room tilting sideways as she slumped forward. She was vaguely aware of hands catching her, voices calling for assistance, before darkness engulfed her completely. She awoke to the steady beep of monitors in a hospital room. Dr. Chen sat beside her bed, reviewing charts. "Welcome back," the doctor said. "You fainted from exhaustion and malnutrition. We've given you fluids and monitored the babies. They're stable for now, but this was a warning." Jasmine tried to sit up. "I need to call work. I have a shift in 3 hours." Dr. Chen gently pressed her back against the pillows. "The only shift you're working right now is growing 3 human beings. Your body is telling you it can't handle the current load." Tears of frustration welled in Jasmine's eyes. "You don't understand. I have no choice." "Everyone has choices," Dr. Chen replied, her voice softening. "Sometimes we just need help to see them." She reached into her lab coat and withdrew a business card. "This is Marianne Thompson at Family First Foundation. They have a program specifically for high-risk pregnancies in financial hardship. They can help with emergency housing, medical costs, even educational support." "I don't take charity," Jasmine said reflexively. "It's not charity, it's community," Dr. Chen corrected. "And someday when you're on your feet, you'll help someone else." She placed the card on the bedside table. "Call them tomorrow. Doctor's orders." 3 days later, Jasmine sat in a modest office at Family First Foundation, explaining her situation to Marianne Thompson, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who listened without interruption. "So you're carrying triplets, working 2 jobs, and planning to return to MIT for a computer science degree," Marianne summarized. "And the father is not in the picture." "Correct," Jasmine replied, offering no elaboration on Marcus. Marianne tapped her pen against a notepad. "Our emergency maternity program could cover your housing in our transitional apartments until 3 months after delivery. We also have an educational partnership with MIT that might interest you." "Partnership?" Jasmine leaned forward. "A special scholarship for exceptional students facing extraordinary circumstances. It would cover tuition and a stipend for 2 years after you return to studies." By January, Jasmine had moved into a small but clean apartment in a building managed by the foundation. She had reluctantly resigned from both jobs, following Dr. Chen's strict orders for modified bed rest. Her days now consisted of remote coursework preparation, prenatal appointments, and mandatory rest periods. The triplets grew steadily, defying the odds against complications. Each ultrasound showed 3 perfect spines, 3 beating hearts, 3 distinct profiles that sometimes appeared to be plotting together, their tiny hands occasionally seeming to reach for one another across the womb. In a cold morning in April of 2011, at 34 weeks gestation, Jasmine's water broke during a routine checkup. Within hours, she was in an operating room for an emergency C-section, Dr. Chen leading the surgical team. "Almost there," the doctor encouraged as the first cry pierced the air. Here comes baby A. One by one, the girls entered the world. Olivia at 4 pounds 3 ounces, Madison at 4 pounds even, and Brooklyn at 3 pounds 15 ounces. Small but remarkably healthy for triplets born 6 weeks early. In the recovery room, a nurse helped Jasmine hold all 3 infants simultaneously, arranging them carefully against her chest. Looking down at their identical faces, so tiny and perfect, Jasmine felt a surge of love so powerful it momentarily took her breath away. "Hello, my daughters," she whispered. "Everything I do from this moment forward is for you." That night, while the babies slept in the NICU where they would remain for monitoring, Jasmine reached for the notebook she kept in her hospital bag. On a clean page, she began writing a detailed plan for their future: housing, childcare, education, her return to MIT, career objectives with projected timelines. Each goal was precise, each step calculated for maximum efficiency with minimal resources. In the final paragraph, she wrote, "Marcus Reynolds said I would never be anything. Every day I will use those words to climb higher, reach further, build stronger. My daughters will never know limitation or rejection. They will know only possibility and determination." While tracing each step of her unlikely future in that worn notebook, Jasmine didn't know that the document would become a historical relic, eventually displayed in the lobby of the billion-dollar headquarters of Washington Digital Solutions, as a symbol of what true determination can build. The worn notebook rested on Jasmine's nightstand, its pages filled with meticulous plans and timelines that had become her roadmap to survival. 8 months had passed since the triplets' birth, 8 months of sleepless nights, endless feedings, and determination that bordered on obsession. Today marked a pivotal moment in her carefully constructed plan, her return to MIT. The alarm blared at 4:30 in the morning. Jasmine silenced it before it could wake the girls, who miraculously remained asleep in their shared crib. The foundation had provided a larger one designed for twins, and Jasmine had adapted it with careful padding to accommodate all 3 infants comfortably. "One day at a time," she whispered to herself, the mantra that had carried her through pregnancy and the harrowing early months of motherhood. She moved silently through her morning routine: shower, dress, prepare bottles. By 5:15, she was seated at the small kitchen table, advanced calculus textbook open, reviewing formulas while warming 3 bottles simultaneously. The girls would wake at 5:30. They adhered to schedule with remarkable precision, as if they'd inherited their mother's sense of timing. Right on cue, the first whimper came from the bedroom. Madison always woke first, followed by Olivia, with Brooklyn typically last. Jasmine arranged the 3 infants in the specialized nursing pillow Dr. Chen had helped her obtain through a hospital donation program. Within minutes, all 3 were feeding, their identical faces focused intently on their bottles. "Today, we begin the next phase," Jasmine told them softly. "Mommy's going back to school. Ms. Helen from downstairs will watch you until 1 o'clock, then I'll be home." The childcare arrangement had been another miracle from the foundation. Helen Grayson, a retired kindergarten teacher who lived in the apartment below, had offered to watch the triplets during Jasmine's morning classes at a rate the young mother could afford. In exchange, Jasmine would help Helen with her computer problems and grocery shopping on weekends. At 7:30, Jasmine placed the girls in their triple stroller, another foundation donation, and made her way downstairs. Helen greeted them with a warm smile and practiced hands. "We'll be fine," the older woman assured her. "You focus on those algorithms." The bus ride to campus felt surreal. For months, Jasmine's world had contracted to the size of her apartment, her existence revolving entirely around 3 small beings and their constant needs. Now, surrounded by commuters with coffee cups and headphones, she felt like an imposter in her former life. The Cambridge campus sprawled before her, unchanged yet somehow different. Students hurried between buildings, many looking far younger than she remembered. Had 8 months really altered her perspective so dramatically? Or was it the responsibility now resting on her shoulders that made these carefree undergraduates seem like children themselves? Jasmine straightened her posture and adjusted her backpack, secondhand but serviceable. Her clothes were similarly practical: dark jeans, a simple blouse, and a cardigan that hid the remaining signs of her pregnancy. Nothing about her appearance suggested she had given birth to triplets less than a year ago, much less that she had started her day before dawn to feed, bathe, and dress 3 infants. "Washington, is that you?" called a voice as she approached the computer science building. Professor Elliot Green, her advanced systems instructor from before her leave, approached with genuine warmth. "Welcome back. We've missed your contributions in class." "Thank you, sir. It's good to be back. Dr. Santos mentioned you might be joining her special project group this semester. Excellent opportunity." Jasmine blinked in surprise. Miranda Santos was a legend in algorithmic optimization, and her special projects were typically reserved for doctoral candidates. "I wasn't aware she knew who I was." Professor Green chuckled. "After that paper you submitted before your leave? The one on recursive efficiency and distributed systems? She specifically asked about you." The first class of the day, Advanced Computational Theory, passed in a blur of familiar terminology and welcome intellectual challenge. Jasmine took meticulous notes, her mind easily slipping back into the rhythm of academic thought. When Professor Chen, no relation to her doctor, posed a particularly complex question about quantum computing principles, Jasmine found herself raising her hand without hesitation. "Ms. Washington, perhaps you'd like to tackle this?" Her answer was concise, thorough, and earned an approving nod. "Precisely. Good to have you back." By noon, Jasmine had attended 3 classes and scheduled a meeting with Dr. Santos for the following day. As she crossed the main quad toward the bus stop, her phone buzzed with a text from Helen. "Girls fed and napping. Take your time." Those 5 words, "take your time," brought unexpected tears to Jasmine's eyes. For months, every minute had been accounted for, every activity calculated against the girl's next feeding or diaper change. The luxury of unhurried movement felt foreign and precious. She detoured to the campus library, finding a quiet corner with a power outlet. Opening her laptop, the same one she'd used throughout her pregnancy, she began organizing her notes and assignments, creating a detailed schedule that would maximize her study efficiency around the triplets' routine. "That's impressive," came a voice from behind her. Jasmine turned to find a young man gesturing toward her color-coded calendar spreadsheet. He was tall, with an athletic build, dark hair, and features that suggested Korean ancestry. "Just trying to stay organized," she replied, instinctively minimizing the window that displayed "Triplets feeding schedule" in bold letters. "I'm Daniel Park," he said, extending his hand. "Architecture program. I think we're in the same computational applications class?" "Jasmine Washington, computer science." "Your comment about applying Fibonacci sequences to architectural load distribution was brilliant," Daniel said, his smile reaching eyes that crinkled at the corners. "I've been trying to incorporate that concept into my sustainable design project." Under normal circumstances, Jasmine might have continued the conversation, perhaps even accepted when Daniel inevitably asked if she wanted to grab coffee. But normal had evaporated from her life the moment she'd seen those 2 pink lines on the pregnancy test. "I should get going," she said, gathering her belongings. "I have commitments." "Of course," Daniel replied easily. "Maybe I'll see you in class Thursday?" "Maybe," Jasmine answered non-committally. The following weeks established a grueling but effective routine. Jasmine woke at 4:30, cared for the girls until Helen arrived, attended morning classes, returned home by 1:30, studied while the triplets napped, then dedicated her evenings to them before starting homework after their 7 o'clock bedtime. Sleep came in precious 4-hour blocks, never enough but all she could afford. During her 3rd week back, she encountered a significant challenge. The compiler's lab required in-person attendance from 3 to 5 on Wednesdays, hours outside her carefully constructed schedule. "I can't make those hours," she explained to Professor Reeves after class. "I have family obligations." "The lab is mandatory," he replied, not unkindly. "Perhaps you could arrange alternative childcare? We all know about your situation." Jasmine stiffened. "My situation?" "The triplets," he clarified. "Word travels. It's quite remarkable what you're doing." Remarkable or not, it didn't solve her immediate problem. As she stood in the hallway calculating options, a now familiar voice interrupted her thoughts. "Child-care issues?" Daniel Park asked, having apparently overheard the exchange. Jasmine's defenses rose immediately. "It's not your concern. Actually, I volunteer at the campus daycare center on Wednesdays," he continued, unfazed by her curtness. "I could bring your little ones to the quiet room there during your lab. They know me, and I'm certified in infant care." Jasmine stared at him, suspicion warring with desperate need. "Why would you do that?" Daniel shrugged. "That algorithm presentation was impressive. If helping with your kids means you'll keep contributing ideas like that, it's worth it to me." He smiled again, that genuine expression that reached his eyes. "Plus, I like kids." That Wednesday, with tremendous trepidation, Jasmine brought the triplets to campus. Daniel met them outside the computer science building, his reaction to 3 identical baby girls remarkably composed. "The 3 musketeers," he said with a grin, expertly taking Brooklyn from her carrier. "Who's who?" "This is Madison," Jasmine indicated. "You're holding Brooklyn, and this is Olivia." Throughout the lab session, Jasmine found herself constantly checking her phone, expecting disaster. Instead, she received periodic text updates with photos. Daniel reading to the girls in the daycare quiet room, all 3 babies remarkably content in his presence. When she rushed to the daycare afterward, she found Daniel sitting cross-legged on a playmat, the triplets arranged around him as he demonstrated simple hand motions to accompany Itsy Bitsy Spider. "We're great friends already," he informed her. "Especially Madison. She's the serious one, right?" Jasmine nodded, astonished that he'd correctly identified the subtle personality differences that most people couldn't perceive. This arrangement continued through the semester. Daniel never asked personal questions about the girl's father or Jasmine's circumstances. He simply appeared when needed, a steady presence offering assistance without expectation. One evening in late November, as they sat in the computer lab working on a joint project for computational applications, Daniel finally broached the subject that had remained unspoken. "That presentation about algorithms was impressive," he said casually. "Need a hand with the little ones?" Jasmine looked up from her keyboard. "You've been helping with the little ones for 2 months now." "I mean this weekend," he clarified. "The library extended hours for finals prep. You could use some uninterrupted study time." "Why are you doing this, Daniel?" she finally asked. "What do you want?" His expression turned thoughtful. "Honestly, I admire you. You're raising triplets alone while outperforming doctoral candidates in advanced computation theory. It's extraordinary." "It's necessary," she corrected. "That doesn't make it less impressive." He hesitated. "Look, I'm not asking for anything. If you need help, I'm offering. No strings attached." That weekend, Daniel watched the girls while Jasmine spent 6 precious hours in the library. When she returned, she found him demonstrating basic coding principles on his laptop, the triplets watching the colorful patterns with fascination. "Madison seems to really understand cause and effect already," he noted. "And Brooklyn organized my highlighters by color without prompting." Over the next month, as finals approached, Daniel became an increasingly regular presence. He never stayed overnight, never presumed intimacy, but his gentle competence with the girls and his quiet support of Jasmine's academic pursuits created a foundation of trust she hadn't expected to find. When Dr. Miranda Santos invited Jasmine to join her prestigious algorithm optimization research group, a rare honor for an undergraduate, Daniel celebrated by bringing cupcakes for dinner. "To the future tech mogul," he toasted, raising a mini cupcake while balancing Olivia on his knee. "It's just a research position," Jasmine demurred. It's a launching pad, he corrected. Dr. Santos only picks students she believes will change the industry. On the final day of the semester, Jasmine received her grades. Perfect scores across all courses, with special commendations from 3 professors. As she stared at the results on her laptop screen, a wave of emotion crashed over her. Pride, exhaustion, and vindication all mingled together. "Mommy did it," she whispered to the triplets, who played contentedly on their mat. "This is just the beginning." Daniel had invited her to celebrate with dinner, but Jasmine had gently declined. "My daughters are my only priority now. I don't have space for anything else." He had accepted her boundary with characteristic grace. "The offer stands, whenever you're ready. No expiration date." That night, as the girls slept soundly in their crib, Jasmine updated her planning notebook, carefully adjusting timelines and adding Dr. Santos's project to her career trajectory. On the margin of the page, she wrote, "Marcus said I had no ambition. Today, I was selected for the most prestigious research group at MIT. My daughters will never know the limitations he tried to place on me." While tracing each step of her unlikely future in that worn notebook, Jasmine didn't know that the document would become a historical relic, eventually displayed in the lobby of the billion-dollar headquarters of Washington Digital Solutions as a symbol of what true determination can build. The winter snow blanketed Boston as the calendar turned to 2014, marking exactly 3 years since Jasmine had walked out of that hospital room with 3 tiny bundles. Now, as January wind rattled the windows of her modest apartment, she stood in the living room corner that had become her makeshift office, staring at the freshly printed business cards in her hand. "Washington Solutions," she read aloud, tracing her finger over the simple blue logo she had designed herself. The corner workspace consisted of little more than a folding table, a second-hand desktop computer, and a whiteboard mounted on the wall with complex flowcharts and algorithms sketched in different colored markers. Behind her, 3 identical girls with matching braids played quietly with wooden blocks, occasionally whispering to each other in the secret language they had developed. At 3 years old, the triplets displayed remarkable focus and coordination, stacking the blocks in patterns rather than random towers. "Mommy making computer things?" Madison asked, the most technically curious of the 3. Jasmine smiled, kneeling to her daughter's level. "Yes, baby. Mommy is starting her own company. Remember how I told you I want to help people make their work easier? That's what Washington Solutions will do." "We help too?" Brooklyn asked, already the practical one who liked organizing toys and books with surprising efficiency. "Someday," Jasmine promised, "when you're bigger." The journey to this moment had been anything but smooth. After graduating with honors from MIT the previous spring, Jasmine had received several impressive job offers from tech companies. The salaries would have provided comfortable living, but the rigid hours would have meant sacrificing time with the girls during their formative years. Instead, she had taken a calculated risk, applying for a special entrepreneurship grant through a program supporting minority business owners. The approval letter had arrived on Christmas Eve, $50,000 in seed funding to launch her optimization software company. It wasn't a fortune in the tech world, but for Jasmine it represented freedom and possibility. While the girls slept that night, Jasmine worked until 3 in the morning, coding the foundation of what would become her proprietary algorithm. Based on her MIT research project, the software could analyze workflow processes and identify inefficiencies that humans might miss. In theory, it could save businesses thousands of hours and millions of dollars. In practice, she needed a first client to prove it worked. That client came in the form of the Dorchester Community Health Center, where Dr. Chen still worked. During a follow-up appointment for the girls' 3-year checkup, Jasmine noticed the frustration of patients waiting hours beyond their appointment times. "Your scheduling system is the problem," she told Dr. Chen during a quiet moment. "I could fix it." Dr. Chen raised an eyebrow. "We've had consultants look at it before. The software is outdated, but replacement systems are expensive." "I don't need to replace it," Jasmine explained. My algorithm would work with your existing system. Just reorganize how appointments are scheduled based on historical patterns of provider timing, procedure duration, and patient arrival tendencies. 1 week later, Jasmine stood before the clinic's administrative board, her simple presentation contrasting sharply with the expensive suits surrounding the table. Her voice remained steady despite her racing heart. I can reduce patient wait times by 30% while increasing daily appointment capacity by 20%, she stated confidently. If I don't deliver those results within 30 days, you pay nothing. The board chairman frowned. You seem very young to make such bold promises. I completed my MIT degree while raising triplets, Jasmine replied evenly. I understand efficiency out of necessity. Her implementation exceeded even her own projections. Within 3 weeks, average wait times dropped by 34%, and the clinic could see 23% more patients daily. Staff satisfaction improved dramatically as overtime decreased and scheduling conflicts vanished. Word spread quickly through Boston's healthcare community. By March, Jasmine received a call that would change everything. Ms. Washington, this is Dr. Robert Alvarez from Boston Regional Hospital Network. We've heard about your work at Dorchester Community Health. We have a much larger problem I think you might help us solve. The morning of her presentation to the hospital executives, Jasmine woke with a knot of anxiety in her stomach. This wasn't a small community clinic. This was a major hospital network with 7 facilities across Massachusetts. Success would establish Washington Solutions as a legitimate contender in healthcare technology. Failure would end her entrepreneurial journey before it truly began. Daniel arrived at 7:30, letting himself in with the spare key she had given him months ago. Their relationship remained deliberately undefined, more than friendship but carefully contained within boundaries Jasmine maintained. He had graduated from MIT's architecture program but delayed a prestigious internship to remain in Boston, reasons unspoken but understood. The presentation looks perfect, he assured her, helping Madison button her coat while Jasmine fixed Olivia's hair. Brooklyn, ever independent, had already dressed herself completely. What if they don't take me seriously? Jasmine whispered, careful to keep her voice below the girl's hearing. Daniel's hands stilled on Madison's buttons. Jasmine, you're offering them something revolutionary. They'd be fools not to see that. The hospital boardroom intimidated with its mahogany table and wall of windows overlooking Boston Harbor. 12 executives, predominantly older white men in expensive suits, watched with skeptical expressions as Jasmine connected her laptop to the projection system. My algorithm can reduce the time patients wait for bed assignments by 27% and optimize staffing resources by 32%, she began, her voice stronger than she felt. This translates to approximately $4.3 million in annual savings across your network, while simultaneously improving patient outcomes through faster treatment initiation. As she walked them through the technical specifications, Jasmine noticed the subtle shift in the room, raised eyebrows, leaning forward, the first notes of respect appearing in previously doubtful expressions. Implementation would take approximately 6 weeks, she concluded, and like my previous clients, I offer a guarantee. If the system doesn't perform as projected, you pay only for the hours worked, not the full contract price. The chief operating officer, a stern woman in her 60s who hadn't spoken during the presentation, finally broke her silence. Where do you see your company in 5 years, Ms. Washington? The question surprised Jasmine. It wasn't about the technology, but about her vision. She thought of the detailed plans in her notebook, the carefully plotted trajectory she reviewed each night. In 5 years, Washington Solutions will be the industry leader in AI-driven optimization across multiple sectors: healthcare, logistics, manufacturing, and finance. We'll have expanded beyond efficiency to predictive modeling that prevents systemic failures before they occur. Her conviction must have registered because 2 days later the contract arrived in her email, $187,000 for full implementation across all 7 hospitals, the largest sum Jasmine had ever seen associated with her name. That evening, after depositing the initial payment check, Jasmine and the girls danced around their small living room to Beyoncé's Run the World Girls, their tradition for celebrating victories both large and small. "We did it!" she told the giggling triplets as they twirled in circles. "Mommy's business is really happening!" Later that night, after tucking the girls into bed, Jasmine sat at her computer and opened a new browser tab. She typed Reynolds Enterprises Boston into the search bar, her finger hovering over the Enter key for several seconds before she finally pressed it. The company website appeared, sleek and corporate, with Marcus's father still featured prominently as CEO. There was no mention of Marcus himself. She closed the tab without further searching. His absence from her life remained complete. No child support requests had been filed, no legal acknowledgement of paternity ever recorded. The triplets' birth certificates listed "Father Unknown," a technical lie that protected them from a truth too complicated for their young minds. With the hospital contract underway, Jasmine needed help. Working from the kitchen table while the girls napped was no longer sustainable. She needed an actual office and at least one employee to handle implementation while she sought new clients. The office came first, a small but professional space in a modest building near Harvard Square in Cambridge. The rent stretched her budget, but the location lent credibility she couldn't afford to sacrifice. Daniel helped her assemble inexpensive furniture from IKEA over a weekend, the girls assisting by decorating the walls with their colorful drawings of computers and people smiling. Finding the right employee proved more challenging. Jasmine interviewed 7 candidates with impressive technical credentials, but none seemed to understand her vision until Raj Patel walked in. A recent MIT graduate with a master's in computer science, Raj had turned down offers from Google and Microsoft, much to his parents' dismay. "Why would you want to work for a startup that can't match those salaries?" Jasmine asked bluntly during the interview. Raj smiled, adjusting his glasses. "Because those companies have 10,000 people doing incremental improvements to existing products. You're building something fundamentally new." He leaned forward. "I read your thesis on recursive optimization in complex systems. It was brilliant." "I can't offer what the tech giants can," Jasmine warned. "I don't need free lunches and nap pods," Raj replied. "I need meaningful work where my contribution matters. Also," he added with a grin, "my mom says I should work for you because you understand family responsibility. She liked the article about you in the MIT Alumni magazine." Raj's first day coincided with a minor crisis. The triplets' daycare closed unexpectedly due to a water main break. Jasmine arrived at the office with 3 curious 3-year-olds in tow, apologizing profusely. "No problem," Raj said, unfazed. "My cousins are about their age. I'm good with kids." He promptly set up a computer station with paper keyboards for the girls while Jasmine prepared for a client call. By summer, Washington Solutions had successfully implemented the hospital network system, exceeding projections by reducing bed wait times by 31%. The success generated inquiries from 3 additional healthcare organizations, and Jasmine found herself working 18-hour days to keep up with demand. Daniel remained a constant presence, never pushing for more than she was ready to give, but steadily reliable in his support of both Jasmine and the girls. On weekends, he often took the triplets to the park or children's museum, giving Jasmine precious hours of uninterrupted work. One warm evening in September, as Daniel helped assemble bookshelves to organize the growing collection of technical manuals and client files in the apartment, Madison approached with a crayon drawing. "Look, Uncle Daniel, I made a program too," she announced proudly, presenting a colorful series of boxes connected by lines. Daniel examined it seriously. "This is excellent, Madison. Is it a workflow diagram?" The 3-year-old nodded solemnly. "For teddy bears to find their honey faster." Jasmine watched from the kitchen doorway, a lump forming in her throat at the easy relationship between her daughters and this man who had asked for nothing but offered everything. In moments like these, Marcus's absence felt less like a wound and more like an inadvertent gift. Had he stayed, these remarkable connections might never have formed. The defining moment for Washington Solutions came in early October, when Dr. Alvarez called Jasmine directly. The CEO of Massachusetts General Hospital was at a conference where our chief of medicine presented the results of your system implementation. They want to meet with you immediately about implementing across their entire system, 15 hospitals statewide. That night, after the girls were asleep, Jasmine sat on the edge of their bed, watching their peaceful faces. In one hand, she held the preliminary contract from Mass General, a deal that would quadruple her company's revenue and require hiring at least 5 more employees. "We're getting there," she whispered to her sleeping daughters. Slowly but surely. When she signed that contract which seemed so monumental, Jasmine didn't have any idea that in just 10 years, billion-dollar contracts with technology giants would be routine on her desk, and that the small corner of her living room would transform into a skyscraper bearing her name. The Mass General contract marked a turning point for Washington Solutions. As spring 2016 bloomed across Boston, the once fledgling startup had evolved into a legitimate contender in the healthcare optimization space. Jasmine's algorithm had consistently delivered results that exceeded projections, saving hospitals millions while improving patient care metrics. The company's reputation grew with each successful implementation, and by May, Washington Solutions occupied a modest but proper office in Cambridge with 15 full-time employees. On a bright Tuesday morning, Jasmine stood before her team in their newly leased space, a far cry from the kitchen table where everything had begun. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the company logo on the wall behind her as she cut a blue ribbon stretched across the entrance. 2 years ago, Washington Solutions was just an idea on a whiteboard in my apartment, she told the assembled group of engineers, developers, and administrative staff. Today, we have clients across New England and are expanding into New York next month. She paused, looking at the faces before her, diverse, talented individuals who had chosen to join her vision. Our mission isn't just to optimize systems, it's to improve lives through efficiency. Every minute we save in a hospital workflow is a minute a doctor can spend with a patient. Every redundancy we eliminate frees resources for better care. Raj, now her chief technology officer, led the applause. In the back of the room, Daniel stood with the triplets, now 6 years old and dressed in matching blue dresses for the occasion. Though still identical in appearance, their distinct personalities had blossomed. Madison watched the proceedings with analytical interest, Olivia bounced slightly with barely contained energy, and Brooklyn meticulously straightened the gift basket she had helped arrange for the office warming celebration. Later that evening, after the team had departed and the girls were exploring every corner of the new space, Jasmine sat in her private office, the first she'd ever had, reviewing their financial projections. "We're actually ahead of schedule," she murmured to Daniel, who was installing a small bookshelf against the wall. "I'm not surprised," he replied, tightening a final screw. "Your hospital management system is years ahead of anything on the market. Have you considered expanding beyond healthcare?" Jasmine looked up from her laptop. "What do you mean?" "The same principles that optimize hospital beds could work for hotel inventory management, or airline logistics, or manufacturing supply chains." Daniel straightened, admiring his handiwork. "Your algorithm solves inefficiency. Inefficiency exists everywhere." His words planted a seed that would quickly flourish. Within weeks, Jasmine had drafted proposals for 3 new industry applications of her technology. By July, Washington Solutions had secured its first non-healthcare client, a regional hotel chain struggling with reservation management and staff scheduling. As the company expanded, so did the triplets' world. Their remarkable intelligence, evident since infancy, had become impossible to ignore. Madison could solve complex mathematical equations meant for students twice her age. Olivia displayed an intuitive understanding of spatial relationships that astonished her teachers. Brooklyn organized not just objects but concepts, creating elaborate systems for everything from her toy collection to meal planning. Their public school kindergarten teacher had pulled Jasmine aside during the spring conference. "Mrs. Washington, I've been teaching for 27 years, and I've never encountered children like yours. They need more challenge than we can provide here." That conversation led Jasmine to the imposing gates of Windsor School, one of Boston's most prestigious private academies. Sitting in the admissions office with the girls beside her, Jasmine felt distinctly out of place among the obvious trappings of old money. "Ms. Washington, your daughter's test results are quite remarkable," said Dr. Eleanor Harrington, the admissions director, reviewing 3 identical folders with different colored tabs. "Particularly in mathematics and logical reasoning, they scored in the 99th percentile across all metrics." Jasmine nodded, unsurprised but proud. "They're very dedicated to learning." Dr. Harrington leaned forward slightly. "May I speak frankly? It's unusual to see such academic prowess in triplets. Often one might excel while the others develop different strengths. Yet all 3 show nearly identical capabilities in different domains. It's quite extraordinary." "They push each other," Jasmine explained. "Madison solves a math problem, then Olivia approaches it differently, then Brooklyn organizes both solutions into a system. They've always worked that way." "We would be delighted to offer them places for the fall semester," Dr. Harrington continued, then hesitated slightly. "However, I should mention that our tuition is $60,000 per student annually. For 3 children?" The number hung in the air. $180,000 per year, nearly Washington Solutions' entire profit margin at that point. Jasmine's expression remained neutral, but her mind raced through calculations. "We do have a scholarship program for exceptional students," Dr. Harrington added, perhaps noting Jasmine's momentary silence. "Given your daughter's remarkable abilities, they would certainly qualify for consideration." 2 weeks later, the acceptance packages arrived with news that all 3 girls had received partial merit scholarships covering 60% of their tuition. It was still a significant financial commitment, but Jasmine adjusted her business growth projections and personal salary to accommodate it. On their first day at Windsor, the triplets stood wide-eyed at the entrance to the sprawling campus with its manicured lawns and brick buildings. They wore new uniforms, their hair neatly braided in identical styles that Jasmine had perfected over years of practice. "This is the science lab," Madison whispered in awe as they toured the facilities, her fingers hovering over microscopes that elementary public schools simply didn't provide. "Look at all the books!" Olivia gasped in the library, 3 stories of knowledge extending above them. Brooklyn, ever practical, was already examining the classroom organizational systems. "Everything has a place," she observed approvingly. That evening, as Jasmine helped the girls with their first homework assignments, already more advanced than their previous schools, her phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Ms. Washington? This is Gerald Thompson from Meridian Manufacturing. We heard about your optimization work from Robert at Boston Regional Hospital. We have a production line efficiency problem I think you might help us solve." As autumn progressed, Washington Solutions expanded into manufacturing and logistics sectors. Each successful implementation built the company's reputation and opened doors to new industries. Jasmine's team grew to 20, then 25, specializing in different applications of the core algorithm. One crisp October evening, after a particularly successful client presentation, Daniel suggested they celebrate. "Dinner at Aquitaine? Just you and me. The girls are old enough for a sitter now." Jasmine hesitated, as she always did when Daniel approached the undefined boundary of their relationship. For 6 years, he had been a constant, supportive presence. Uncle Daniel to the girls, trusted friend and occasional handyman to her. But Jasmine had maintained emotional distance, focusing all her energy on her daughters and company. "It's just dinner, Jasmine," he said gently, reading her expression. 3 years helping with the girls and you still won't let me officially call it a date?" Something in his tone, patient but tinged with longing, broke through a barrier she'd maintained since Marcus's rejection. Sitting across from Daniel at the elegant South End restaurant later that evening, Jasmine finally addressed what had remained unspoken. "It's not you, Daniel. I have so much at stake. 3 daughters, a growing company. I can't afford distractions or vulnerabilities." Daniel's eyes, warm and understanding, held hers. "I've watched you build a company from nothing while raising 3 brilliant girls. Do you really think a relationship would derail all that? Or could it maybe, possibly, make the journey a little less solitary?" "The last time I trusted someone," she began. "I'm not him," Daniel said simply. "Whoever he was, whatever he did, I'm not him." That dinner marked a subtle but significant shift. While Jasmine didn't immediately embrace the idea of a romantic relationship, she allowed the possibility to exist. Daniel's patience continued, never pushing but steadily present. As Washington Solutions approached its 3rd anniversary, Jasmine presented to a consortium of supply chain executives. "The same principle that optimizes hospital beds can revolutionize your inventory management. Our algorithm doesn't just address current inefficiencies, it predicts and prevents future bottlenecks." The presentation led to contracts with 2 major retail distribution centers, further expanding the company's portfolio beyond healthcare. With each new application, Jasmine's team refined the algorithm, making it more versatile and powerful. One evening, working late at the office while the girls completed homework in the conference room, Jasmine noticed a pattern in the data from different implementations. The algorithm performed differently, better, in environments where it had been running longer. It wasn't just the refinements her team had programmed. The system itself seemed to be learning from experience. "What if?" she whispered to herself, quickly opening a new document to capture her thoughts. What if the algorithm could learn and adapt itself with each new implementation? If it could identify patterns across different industries and apply those insights automatically? The next morning, she scheduled a meeting with a former MIT professor specializing in artificial intelligence. "What you're proposing is ambitious," Dr. Liam Chen told her after reviewing her notes. "Essentially, you want to evolve your optimization system into a self-learning AI that adapts across different applications. It's cutting-edge stuff, but theoretically sound. You'll need more resources, though." For weeks, Jasmine worked weekends and evenings developing the framework for this evolution. One Saturday afternoon, as she explained to the girls why she needed to work instead of taking them to the aquarium as planned, Brooklyn surprised her with an insight. "Like this?" the 6-year-old asked, taking Jasmine's marker and redrawing a workflow diagram Jasmine had sketched on the whiteboard. Brooklyn's version connected previously separate processes in a way that, Jasmine realized with astonishment, actually improved the logic. "Yes, exactly like that," she confirmed, studying her daughter's intuitive rearrangement. "How did you see that connection?" Brooklyn shrugged. "It just made more sense this way. Things should flow naturally." That night, after tucking the girls into bed, Jasmine stood in their doorway watching them sleep. These confident, brilliant children bore no resemblance to the terrified young woman who had once stood shivering outside the Millennium Tower. They had never known rejection or limitation, only possibility and encouragement. In her home office, surrounded by technical manuals and prototype diagrams, Jasmine worked until 3 in the morning. The solution had come to her complete and fully formed, a way to integrate machine learning into her optimization system that would revolutionize its capabilities. As she frantically typed code and sketched architectures, she didn't want to lose the inspiration to sleep. That night, frantically sketching diagrams that would integrate artificial intelligence into her algorithms, Jasmine didn't know she was creating the technology that would not only transform her company, but that would one day attract the envious attention of the man who had dismissed her as insignificant. The algorithm's revelation that night proved to be Washington Solutions' inflection point. By early 2019, Jasmine's midnight inspiration had evolved into a revolutionary artificial intelligence platform that didn't merely optimize existing workflows. It predicted future inefficiencies and proactively resolved them before they materialized. The transition from Washington Solutions to Washington Digital Solutions marked more than a name change. It signaled the company's quantum leap from efficiency consultant to AI innovator. On a bright spring morning, Jasmine stood on the stage at the TechBridge conference in Boston, her poised demeanor betraying none of the nervous energy coursing through her. Before her sat technology executives, venture capitalists, and industry analysts, the gatekeepers of the tech world she was determined to transform. At Washington Digital, we're not just predicting patterns, she explained, as dynamic visualizations flowed across the massive screen behind her. We're redefining how efficiency is achieved. Our platform doesn't react to problems, it prevents them from occurring. In the front row, representatives from America's largest retailers watched intently as Jasmine demonstrated how the AI identified potential supply chain disruptions weeks before traditional analytics could detect them. Implementing our system has reduced logistics costs by an average of 37% in the first quarter alone, she continued, the confidence in her voice earned through years of delivering on promises. More importantly, it has increased inventory accuracy to 99.4%, virtually eliminating the need for emergency shipments or stockouts. After the presentation, Jasmine found herself surrounded by business cards and handshakes. Among them was Jeffrey Steinman, Chief Operations Officer for North Star Retail Group, a conglomerate operating over 3,000 stores nationwide. "Ms. Washington, that was remarkable," he said, studying her with the calculating gaze of someone who had seen countless tech pitches. "Our current system cost $11 million to implement 3 years ago, and it doesn't do half of what yours demonstrated today." 2 weeks later, North Star became Washington Digital's first Fortune 50 client, implementing the AI platform across their entire distribution network. The contract value, $8 million, more than the company's entire previous year's revenue. Success bred success. By summer, Washington Digital Solutions had outgrown its Cambridge office and moved to a sleek building in Kendall Square with panoramic views of the Charles River. The staff had expanded to 75, with specialized teams focusing on different industry applications of the core AI technology. On moving day, Jasmine gathered the original team members in the new reception area, where a timeline of the company's evolution graced the wall. "When we started, optimization meant making existing processes more efficient," she told them. "Today it means reimagining how work happens. This isn't just about better business, it's about creating more human time, more resources for what matters." Raj, still her trusted lieutenant after 5 years, raised a champagne glass. To Washington Digital, and to Jasmine, who saw the future when the rest of us were just trying to fix the present. As the company soared, the triplets, now 9 years old, were blossoming into remarkable young people. Their academic achievements had become legendary at Windsor School, where teachers had grown accustomed to making special accommodations for their accelerated learning. In October, Jasmine sat in the audience of the Massachusetts State Mathematics Olympiad, watching with contained pride as Madison took the stage to receive the first-place medal, competing against students from high schools across the state. Olivia had placed third in the same competition, while Brooklyn had chosen to focus on the Young Entrepreneurs Challenge instead, where her efficiency-based business plan for reducing school cafeteria waste had won top honors. "Your daughters are extraordinary," remarked the principal, joining Jasmine after the ceremony. "It's unusual to see such diverse talents within identical triplets." "They've always had their own paths," Jasmine replied, watching as the girls accepted congratulations from fellow competitors. "They just happened to excel on all of them." The girls' social awareness had developed alongside their intellectual gifts. Each month, Jasmine ensured they spent time in Roxbury, volunteering at the community center where she had once received assistance. The triplets organized book drives, tutored younger children, and never displayed the entitlement that sometimes accompanied privilege. "It's important you understand where we came from," Jasmine often told them. "Success isn't about leaving others behind. It's about bringing more people forward with you. On a crisp autumn evening, as the golden light of sunset bathed the Boston Public Garden, Daniel and Jasmine walked along the lagoon where the swan boats had been stored away for winter. The triplets ran ahead, their laughter carrying across the water as they played an elaborate game of their own invention. "Do you remember our first real conversation?" Daniel asked, his hand comfortably entwined with hers after years of patient courtship. "You were color-coding your study schedule in the library. And you were impressed by my organizational skills," Jasmine recalled, smiling at the memory. "I was impressed by everything about you," he corrected, stopping to face her. "Your determination, your brilliance, your devotion to 3 little girls who needed you to be everything." As the sun dipped below the skyline, Daniel knelt on the pathway, producing a small velvet box from his coat pocket. The ring inside was simple but elegant, a solitary diamond set in platinum, its facets capturing the last rays of sunlight. "I'm not asking to replace anyone," he said softly. "I'm asking to continue being part of this incredible family you've created. I'm asking if I can walk beside you for all the achievements still to come." Jasmine looked at this man who had never once made her feel like a burden or a limitation, who had always seen her potential and that of her daughters, and finally allowed herself to fully trust. "Yes," she whispered, as the girls ran back to witness the moment, their excited squeals drawing smiles from passing strangers. As 2020 began, the newly engaged couple balanced wedding planning with Washington Digital's explosive growth. The AI platform had expanded beyond retail into manufacturing, transportation, and energy sectors. With 250 employees across 3 offices, the company was no longer a startup but an established force in the technology landscape. Then came March, and with it a global pandemic that shut down cities and upended economies. From her home office in the brownstone she and Daniel had purchased in Brookline, Jasmine led daily crisis meetings with her executive team. "Healthcare systems are overwhelmed," she told them during one video conference, news footage of overrun hospitals playing silently on her second monitor. "Our optimization technology could help manage critical resources, ventilators, ICU beds, staff scheduling." Within 48 hours, Jasmine had redirected a specialized team to adapt their platform for pandemic response. By the end of the week, she was on video calls with public health officials. "We're offering our technology at no cost to hospitals during this crisis," she announced to stunned health department officials from 3 states. "Implementation teams are ready to deploy virtually. We can have systems operational within 72 hours. The girls, now schooling remotely from home, observed their mother's leadership with quiet admiration. One evening, as Jasmine reviewed hospital capacity models, Madison approached with a laptop. "Mom, I think there's a variable you haven't considered," she said, displaying a spreadsheet of her own creation. "What if the algorithm factored in healthcare workers' commuting patterns? In New York, many staff live in areas with different infection rates than their hospitals." Jasmine studied her daughter's work, impressed by the insight. "This is brilliant, Madison. Where did you get the commuting data?" "Brooklyn found it in public transportation records," Madison explained, and Olivia wrote a script to clean and normalize it. The triplets' contribution was incorporated into the next deployment, improving prediction accuracy by 8%, a margin that translated to potentially hundreds of lives affected. As the pandemic stretched from weeks into months, Washington Digital not only survived, but thrived. Remote work had always been part of the company culture, allowing for seamless transition, while the value of predictive resource optimization became more apparent than ever to businesses struggling with disrupted supply chains. In August, Boston Magazine featured the Washington family on its cover, with the headline, "The Technology Revolution of the Washington Family." Inside, glossy photographs showed Jasmine and the girls in their home office, surrounded by computers and whiteboards covered in code and diagrams. The article detailed both the company's success and the extraordinary achievements of the 9-year-old prodigies. In a male-dominated tech industry, Jasmine Washington has built a multi-million-dollar AI empire while raising three of Boston's brightest young minds, the article began, and she's just getting started. The morning the magazine hit newsstands, Jasmine's phone buzzed with a news alert. Reynolds Enterprises announces restructuring amid pandemic losses. She hesitated briefly before opening the article, her first deliberate acknowledgement of Marcus's existence in years. The piece detailed how the once prominent financial firm had failed to adapt to digital transformation, losing significant market share to more tech-savvy competitors. There was a quote from Marcus, now listed as Chief Financial Officer rather than CEO, a demotion that suggested his father had lost confidence in his leadership. Jasmine closed the article without finishing it. Marcus Reynolds belonged to a past she had transcended. In November, as the pandemic's second wave intensified, Jasmine received a call from Silicon Valley. James Chen, managing partner at Horizon Ventures, had been tracking Washington Digital's growth. "Your technology isn't just impressive, it's transformative across multiple sectors," he said during their virtual meeting. "We're interested in discussing a significant investment to fuel your global expansion." The offer that followed was beyond anything Jasmine had anticipated. $180 million for 22% of the company, valuing Washington Digital Solutions at nearly $820 million. It would provide the capital needed to establish international offices and accelerate development of next-generation AI capabilities. Before making a decision, Jasmine gathered Daniel, Raj, and her other key executives for a frank discussion. "This would allow us to scale globally," she acknowledged, "but I'd lose some control over the company's direction." "You've always said our mission is to make the world more efficient," Raj reminded her. "Maybe this is how we do that on a truly global scale." Later that evening, Jasmine sat with the triplets in their shared study room, explaining the potential investment in terms they could understand. "This company is part of your legacy too," she told them. "Your ideas have helped shape it. What do you think about taking this next step?" Madison considered the question with her characteristic analytical approach. "The capital efficiency makes sense if the growth projections hold." Olivia nodded. "And their network could open doors in Asia and Europe faster than we could on our own." Brooklyn, practical as always, asked the most important question. "Will we still be making decisions about how our technology is used to help people?" "Always," Jasmine promised. "That's non-negotiable." In January 2021, Jasmine signed the historic agreement with Horizon Ventures. As camera flashes captured the moment that officially made Washington Digital a unicorn in the tech world, she couldn't know that among the investors who would analyze the report of this new investment would be Marcus Reynolds, now struggling to maintain the relevance of his family's company. The signing ceremony with Horizon Ventures transformed Washington Digital Solutions overnight. Jasmine's phone hadn't stopped buzzing with congratulatory messages, interview requests, and partnership inquiries since the news broke. The investment of $180 million had catapulted her company into the elite unicorn club, a status that opened doors previously barred by the invisible but powerful barriers of the tech world's old guard. Standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her new office in Seaport District, Jasmine watched the morning sunlight dance across Boston Harbor. The same waters that had once swallowed Marcus's dismissive check now reflected the gleaming glass headquarters of Washington Digital Solutions. "The Singapore team is ready whenever you are," Claire, her executive assistant, announced from the doorway. Jasmine nodded, smoothing the lapel of her tailored Armani suit. "Let's not keep them waiting." In the state-of-the-art conference room, wall-mounted screens displayed the faces of potential partners from across the Pacific. With the new investment, Washington Digital was expanding aggressively into international markets, with offices planned for Singapore, London, and São Paulo within the year. "Our AI platform reduced operational costs for clients by an average of 37% last quarter," Jasmine explained to the rapt audience of Singaporean executives. "We're projecting expansion into the ASEAN market to drive 42% growth in the next fiscal year." After the call, Raj entered with the architectural renderings for the Singapore office. The local team loves the design. Construction begins next month, and we should be operational by September. Perfect. What about London? Ahead of schedule. We've secured the space in Canary Wharf, and the hiring team has already interviewed 30 candidates for the core implementation group. The expansion wasn't just geographic. Washington Digital had launched a revolutionary fintech division that used their AI platform to optimize banking processes and investment strategies. This direct entry into financial services put them in direct competition with traditional institutions, including Reynolds Enterprises. That evening, as Jasmine reviewed the quarterly projections in her home office, the doorbell rang. She glanced at the security camera feed on her tablet to see Daniel on the front steps, arms laden with what appeared to be thick legal documents. "The adoption paperwork came through," he announced as she opened the door, his face alight with barely contained joy. "Our lawyer says everything's in order. We just need to schedule the court date." Since their engagement in the Boston Public Garden, Daniel and Jasmine had carefully progressed their relationship. The wedding had been an intimate affair at Martha's Vineyard the previous summer, just family and close friends gathered on the beach at sunset. The triplets had served as bridesmaids, their matching dresses catching the golden light as they scattered rose petals along the sand. Now, nearly a year into their marriage, Daniel was taking the final step to legally becoming the girl's father, a role he had fulfilled in every meaningful way for years. "They're going to be so excited," Jasmine said, examining the documents. At 12 years old, the triplets were old enough to understand the significance of adoption. "Should we tell them tonight?" Daniel nodded, his smile widening. "I picked up 3 special gifts to mark the occasion." At dinner that evening, after the girls had finished describing their day at school, Daniel cleared his throat. "I have something important to ask all 3 of you," he began, his voice uncharacteristically solemn. "You know that I love you as if you were my own daughters. I've been blessed to watch you grow into the remarkable young women you're becoming." He placed 3 small gift boxes on the table. "I would be honored if you would allow me to legally become your father." The triplets exchanged glances, their silent communication system still intact after 12 years, before simultaneously reaching for the boxes. Inside each was a delicate silver bracelet engraved with their initials intertwined with Daniel's. "Does this mean we'll have your last name too?" Madison asked, analytical as always. "If you want," Daniel replied. "You could be Washington Park or keep Washington. It's entirely your choice." "I think Washington Park sounds distinguished," Olivia decided, already fastening her bracelet around her wrist. Brooklyn, ever practical, asked, "When do we go to court? Should we wear our formal uniforms?" The adoption hearing took place on a Thursday afternoon in late spring. Judge Eleanor Martinez smiled at the family assembled before her bench, Jasmine and Daniel standing behind the triplets, all 3 girls in matching navy dresses with their hair styled identically for the occasion. "Young ladies," the judge addressed them directly, "when a step-parent wishes to adopt, we always ensure the children are in agreement. Do you understand what adoption means legally?" Madison stepped forward slightly. "It means Daniel will be our legal father with all parental rights and responsibilities. He'll be able to make medical decisions for us, sign school permissions, and be recognized as our parent in all legal contexts." The judge's eyebrows rose slightly at the precise legal explanation coming from a 12-year-old. "That's exactly right. And is this something you all want?" 3 voices answered in perfect unison. "Yes, Your Honor." "Daniel Park, do you understand the responsibilities you're assuming? Do you commit to raising these children as your own, providing guidance, support, and love throughout their lives?" Daniel's voice was steady but thick with emotion. "I do, Your Honor. They've been my daughters in my heart for years. I'm just grateful to make it official." After signing the final documents, Judge Martinez smiled warmly. "By the power vested in me by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I hereby declare Madison, Olivia, and Brooklyn to be the legal daughters of Daniel Park, with all the rights and privileges thereof. Congratulations to the Washington Park family." Outside the courthouse, as Daniel hugged each girl in turn, Jasmine felt a completeness she had once thought impossible. The family that Marcus had rejected had been rebuilt, stronger and more loving than she could have imagined. Later that week, Jasmine sat at her desk reviewing proposals for Washington Digital's new blockchain-based financial platform. The technology would eliminate intermediaries in financial transactions, reducing costs dramatically while increasing security and transparency. "Our new platform will utilize blockchain to eliminate intermediaries and reduce costs by 60%, she explained to her board of directors. "This positions us to compete directly with traditional banking services, but with a fundamentally different approach." As the company expanded into financial technology, Jasmine occasionally encountered mentions of Reynolds Enterprises in industry reports. The once prestigious firm had failed to innovate during the digital transformation wave, losing significant market share to more agile competitors. Marcus's name appeared in these reports with diminishing frequency, suggesting his influence within his family's company was waning. One evening, as Jasmine helped Brooklyn with an especially complex science project, her daughter asked the question that had been building for some time. "Mom," Brooklyn began hesitantly, her fingers tracing patterns on the table, "why do we never talk about our biological father?" The question, though not unexpected, still sent a jolt through Jasmine. She had always known this day would come, had prepared for it, yet the actual moment still caught her off guard. Madison and Olivia, sensing the significance of the question, abandoned their own activities to join the conversation. Jasmine took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "When you were born, your biological father chose not to be part of our lives. He wasn't ready for the responsibility of parenthood." "Was it because there were 3 of us?" Olivia asked, her expression troubled. "No, sweetheart. It was about his choices, not about you, never about you." Madison, ever analytical, pressed further. "Do we look like him? Do we have his traits?" Jasmine studied the 3 identical faces before her, the shape of their eyes, the curve of their jaws, features that sometimes still caused her heart to stutter when she glimpsed shadows of Marcus in them. "Yes, there are some physical resemblances," she acknowledged. "And perhaps some of your analytical abilities come from his side. But who you are, your character, your kindness, your determination, those are qualities you've developed yourselves." Brooklyn, always the most perceptive about emotions, asked the question Jasmine had been dreading. "Will we ever meet him?" Jasmine reached out to hold her daughter's hands. "When you turn 16, I promise I'll tell you everything. His name, the full circumstances, all of it. Then, if you want to meet him, that will be your decision to make. I won't stand in your way." "Why 16?" Madison questioned. "Because by then, you'll be mature enough to understand a complicated situation and make your own informed choices about it. Some parts of the story are difficult." The girls seemed satisfied with this answer, accepting the timeline with the same rationality they applied to most challenges. That night, after they had gone to bed, Daniel found Jasmine in their home office, staring at an old newspaper clipping about Reynolds Enterprises she had kept hidden in her desk. "They asked about him," she said simply. Daniel nodded, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You handled it perfectly. They deserve to know their history when they're ready. I've spent so many years protecting them from the rejection I experienced. What if meeting him reopens that wound?" "They're stronger than you think," Daniel reminded her. "And they have something you didn't have back then. A solid foundation of knowing they're loved unconditionally." As 2023 progressed, Washington Digital Solutions continued its meteoric rise. The company's valuation reached $2.3 billion after the successful launch of its financial platform. With offices now operating on 3 continents and over 700 employees worldwide, Jasmine found herself leading a global enterprise that influenced how businesses operated across multiple industries. In November, Jasmine received an email that made her pause. Dear Ms. Washington, on behalf of the Massachusetts Innovation Council, we are pleased to inform you that you have been selected as this year's Entrepreneur of the Year. This honor recognizes your extraordinary contributions to the technology landscape and economic growth of our Commonwealth. The award will be presented at the annual Innovation Gala on December 15th at the Four Seasons Hotel. As recipient, you are invited to deliver the keynote address. Please confirm your acceptance at your earliest convenience. Sincerely, Governor Elizabeth Phillips. The Innovation Gala was the premier business event of the year in Boston, attended by every significant corporate and political figure in Massachusetts. To be named keynote speaker was an honor that placed Jasmine firmly at the pinnacle of the business community, a community that had once seemed impenetrably closed to a young black woman from Roxbury. Of course you'll accept, Daniel said when she shared the news. Your story will inspire thousands. As Jasmine worked with her communications team on the keynote address, a theme emerged naturally: how rejection can become fuel for success. Without naming Marcus, she would tell the story of how his dismissal had sparked her determination to build something extraordinary. I want to talk about how the rejection can be fuel for success, she told her speechwriter, without omitting the difficult parts. 2 weeks before the gala, Claire entered Jasmine's office with an unusual update. We've received a last-minute request from Reynolds Enterprises for a seat at the gala, specifically at a table near the stage. Jasmine's hand stilled over the document she'd been signing. Reynolds Enterprises? That's unexpected. Apparently, they're interested in our new blockchain system. Their technology officer reached out specifically. For a moment, Jasmine considered denying the request. Then, a different thought surfaced. Perhaps it was time to close this circle. After all, what better vindication could there be than to stand at the podium, success personified, while Marcus witnessed the empire he had unwittingly helped create? Approve it, she decided. Put them in the first row. On the evening of the gala, as their Tesla Model X glided down Commonwealth Avenue toward the Four Seasons Hotel, Jasmine adjusted her impeccable red Valentino suit. In the back seat, the triplets wore coordinated Brooks Brothers dresses, excitedly discussing the algorithm demonstration they would assist with during the keynote. Are you nervous, Mom? Brooklyn asked, always the most perceptive. Jasmine smiled, adjusting a diamond earring. No, sweetheart. I'm exactly where I should be. The car stopped before the luxurious hotel. Photographers positioned themselves to capture the arrival of the woman who had transformed Boston's technological landscape. Jasmine adjusted her posture and took a deep breath, unaware that beyond the golden doors, the past awaited her for a reckoning. While preparing for the event that would crown her extraordinary ascent, Jasmine couldn't imagine that her story of overcoming adversity wasn't just about to inspire the audience, but also to directly confront the man who had so confidently declared she would never amount to anything. The Four Seasons Hotel stood majestically against the Boston skyline, its golden doors framed by elegant columns and illuminated by strategically placed spotlights. Limousines and luxury vehicles formed a procession along the circular driveway, discharging passengers in formal attire. Inside, the grand ballroom had been transformed into a glittering showcase of Massachusetts business elite. Crystal chandeliers reflecting off designer gowns and bespoke suits, champagne flutes clinking amidst the sophisticated hum of networking conversations. Marcus Reynolds stood at the crowded bar, absently swirling an 18-year-old Macallan in a crystal tumbler. At 43, he still possessed the handsome features that had once opened doors throughout Boston society, though they had softened with age and indulgence. His custom Italian suit concealed the beginning of a paunch, and his artfully styled hair masked the early stages of recession at his temples. The gold signet ring bearing the Reynolds family crest caught the light as he raised the glass to his lips. "Reynolds, good to see you," said Howard Klein, a venture capitalist who had once courted Reynolds Enterprises as a client before mysteriously withdrawing interest last year. "Surprised to see your name on the attendance list. Financial services don't usually mix with the tech crowd." Marcus forced a polite smile. "Diversification is essential in today's market. We're exploring partnerships in financial technology." The truth was more desperate than strategic. Reynolds Enterprises had lost 30% of its market value over the past 18 months. His father's retirement had coincided with a series of poor investments championed by Marcus, and his recent divorce from Catherine Lowell, daughter of the Lowell banking family, had cost him both socially and financially. The 30% of his shares she'd taken in the settlement had been just the beginning. His father had distributed another significant percentage among cousins and trusted executives before stepping down, leaving Marcus with only minority control of his family's legacy. "The governor's about to begin," Klein noted, gesturing toward the stage where staff were making final adjustments to the podium. "Should be an interesting evening. Washington is quite the speaker, they say." "Washington?" Marcus asked, the name vaguely familiar but not immediately placing it. "Jasmine Washington. Tonight's honoree, the Washington Digital Solutions woman." Klein studied Marcus with mild surprise. "Surely you've heard of her. Built a $2.3 billion AI empire from scratch. Remarkable story. Single mother of triplets, started coding from her apartment while raising them alone." Before Marcus could respond, the ballroom lights dimmed slightly, directing attention toward the entrance doors. A noticeable shift in energy rippled through the crowd as conversations hushed and heads turned. Marcus followed the collective gaze, his glass halfway to his lips. A woman in a striking red Valentino suit entered with the confident stride of someone who belonged at the center of attention. Her dark skin seemed to glow under the chandeliers, her posture impeccable, her expression one of poised authority. Flanking her were three identical teenage girls, moving with the same graceful confidence, their matching dresses suggesting careful coordination rather than juvenile uniformity. The Macallan slipped from Marcus's fingers, shattering against the marble floor with a crash that went largely unnoticed amid the applause greeting the newcomers. A waiter rushed forward with a cloth, but Marcus stood frozen, his eyes locked on the woman's face. "Jasmine," he whispered, the name escaping involuntarily from lips suddenly gone dry. Klein glanced at him curiously. "You know Jasmine Washington?" Marcus couldn't answer. His mind was frantically processing what his eyes were telling him. The poised CEO crossing the room bore little resemblance to the frightened receptionist he'd dismissed from his penthouse 13 years ago, yet it was undeniably her. And the girls, the three identical teenagers whose features even at this distance triggered an unsettling recognition, could they possibly be? "Extraordinary woman," Klein continued, misinterpreting Marcus's silence as interest. "Refused a $1.8 billion acquisition offer from Google last year. Her AI platform has revolutionized everything from hospital management to global supply chains. Started with nothing, they say, single mother of triplets, built an empire while raising them. The girls are reportedly brilliant, all at Windsor on merit scholarships." Each word struck Marcus like a physical blow. Triplets, empire, brilliant. The pieces assembled themselves into a narrative so unexpected it left him dizzy. A chiming sound indicated guests should take their seats for dinner. Marcus checked his table assignment. First row, seat 8. As he made his way forward on unsteady legs, he pulled out his phone and quickly searched Jasmine Washington triplets. The screen filled with images and articles. The three girls receiving science awards, Jasmine accepting technology honors, features in Business Insider and Forbes. One headline particularly caught his eye: Washington Digital Solutions launches fintech division, traditional banking faces new challenger. Taking his assigned seat, Marcus found himself positioned directly in front of the podium, less than 10 feet from where Jasmine would soon stand. He studied the printed program with growing discomfort. The title of her keynote address seemed aimed directly at him. Converting Rejection into Revolution: How others' failure can fuel your success. The governor took the stage to enthusiastic applause, delivering opening remarks about innovation and Massachusetts technology leadership. Marcus barely heard the words, his attention fixed on Jasmine at the head table, engaged in animated conversation with the MIT president. She looked so confident, so completely in command, nothing like the young woman who had once trembled before him with news that had filled him with horror and disgust. "It is my great honor to present this year's Entrepreneur of the Year award," the governor announced, "to a visionary who has transformed our Commonwealth's technological landscape. Starting with just an idea and facing obstacles that would have defeated many, she built one of the most innovative and successful companies in the country. Ladies and gentlemen, Jasmine Washington." The room erupted in applause. Marcus remained motionless, his hands frozen in his lap, as Jasmine rose gracefully and approached the podium. For a terrible moment, as her eyes scanned the audience, he feared she would recognize him, call him out, expose him before the assembled elite of Boston. But her gaze passed over him with only the briefest hesitation, a microsecond of recognition before her professional smile returned and she addressed the crowd. "Thank you, Governor Phillips. It's an honor to be here tonight." Her voice carried easily through the room, educated and polished, with no trace of the Roxbury accent he had once mocked. "My journey began in circumstances many would consider impossible to overcome. A young black woman from Roxbury, pregnant with triplets, abandoned, without resources, and repeatedly informed about my limitations by people who considered themselves superior." Marcus felt the color drain from his face as her eyes briefly found his again. 13 years ago, a man told me I would never be anything beyond that girl from the poor neighborhood, without ambition and without a place in his world. Those words could have destroyed me. Instead, they became my fuel. Sweat beaded on Marcus's forehead as heads turned subtly in his direction. Did they know? Could they somehow sense that he was the villain in her origin story? Jasmine continued her speech, methodically detailing each step of her rise, from single mother coding at night after her daughters slept, to winning her first hospital contract, to developing the revolutionary AI platform that now powered global corporations. The presentation screens showed growth charts of Washington Digital, technological breakthroughs, international awards. And none of this would have been possible without my daughters, my constant inspiration. Jasmine gestured toward the front row where the triplets sat. "Olivia, Madison, and Brooklyn, would you join me?" The three teenagers rose with practiced grace and ascended the steps to the stage. Standing together, the family resemblance was undeniable, not just between the identical sisters, but in certain features that Marcus recognized with a sickening clarity from his own mirror. The shape of their eyes, the line of their jaws, anyone seeing them side by side with him would know instantly. "Our daughters developed a key component of the new optimization algorithm we're launching next quarter," Jasmine continued, her emphasis on "our" striking Marcus like a blow. "Madison, would you explain briefly?" The girl stepped forward with confident poise, taking the microphone as if she'd been presenting to executives her entire life. "Our algorithm uses machine learning to predict supply chain bottlenecks with 97.3% accuracy, allowing proactive adjustments that save an average 42% in operational costs." Marcus stared in disbelief. This teenager spoke more eloquently about advanced technology than most of the executives he worked with. And she was his daughter. They all were. The daughters he had dismissed as three bastards who didn't fit into his 5-year plan. After the impressive technical presentation, Jasmine reclaimed the microphone. "As you can see, the extraordinary talent of these young women proves that nobody can define our potential but ourselves." The speech concluded to thunderous applause, the audience rising in a standing ovation. Marcus remained seated, unable to move, as people around him stood and cheered. A line quickly formed of admirers waiting to congratulate Jasmine. During the reception that followed, Marcus moved through the crowd like a ghost, nursing a fresh Macallan and gathering courage. Finally, he saw an opening as Jasmine briefly stood alone between conversations, having just concluded a discussion with the CEO of Eastern Bank. "Jasmine," he said, his voice sounding strange to his own ears. She turned, her expression shifting from the warm engagement she'd shown others to a glacial politeness. "Mr. Reynolds, I didn't expect to see you here tonight. Jasmine, we need to talk." His voice emerged strangled, barely audible above the ambient conversation. "Those girls are my daughters," she completed firmly, "and Daniel Parks, my husband, the only father they know." "But I am—" "You are what, Mr. Reynolds?" she interrupted, her voice controlled but carrying an edge sharp enough to cut. "The man who called me a worthless receptionist? Who ejected me from his apartment at 3 in the morning during a snowstorm? Who suggested I solve the problem with a check?" Each question was delivered with precision, her eyes never leaving his. "Or perhaps you're the man whose company has lost 32% of market value in the last 2 years, while mine grew 87%. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. She had researched him. "Jasmine, I was young, immature. I made a terrible mistake. If I had known—" "If you had known what?" she asked, her smile devoid of warmth. "That I would become wealthy and powerful, you would have acted differently." She shook her head slightly. "That's exactly the point, Marcus. I had no value to you when I was just a girl from Roxbury with potential. Now that I'm someone who might benefit you, suddenly I deserve your attention." The triplets approached, curious about the tense conversation. Marcus looked at them, seeing his own reflection multiplied by 3 in their features. "Mom, is everything okay?" the one he recognized as Brooklyn asked. "Perfectly," Jasmine replied. "Girls, this is Marcus Reynolds, an old acquaintance. Mr. Reynolds, my daughters, Olivia, Madison, and Brooklyn." The teenagers greeted him politely, showing no indication they perceived any connection. Marcus tried to form words, but his throat constricted around them. "Actually," Jasmine continued, her professional demeanor returning, "Mr. Reynolds might be interested to know that Washington Digital is considering an acquisition in the financial sector. Perhaps we can discuss that on another occasion in a more professional environment." With that, she guided her daughters away, leaving Marcus paralyzed, finally comprehending what he had rejected 13 years earlier. Not just a family, but a brilliant future that now belonged to another man. While the assembled guests continued celebrating innovation and progress around him, Marcus Reynolds stood alone, watching the backs of 4 extraordinary women disappear into the crowd, the weight of his monumental miscalculation finally settling fully upon his shoulders. Marcus stood frozen in the grand ballroom long after most guests had departed. Waitstaff cleared champagne flutes around him as he stared at the stage where Jasmine had delivered her keynote. The evening replayed in his mind like a horror film he couldn't stop. The 3 girls who were unmistakably his daughters, the empire Jasmine had built, the subtle public humiliation as she referenced his rejection without naming him. "Sir, we're closing the ballroom now," a staff member said gently. The drive to his Beacon Hill apartment passed in a blur. Once inside, Marcus poured himself another Macallan, his 4th of the night, and opened his laptop. His fingers trembled slightly as he typed Jasmine Washington into the search bar. The results overwhelmed him. Business profiles, technology conference keynotes, magazine covers. Washington Digital Solutions had 780 employees across 4 countries. Their client list included 60% of Fortune 500 companies. Their proprietary AI platform had revolutionized everything from healthcare logistics to manufacturing efficiency. And at the center of it all stood Jasmine, the woman he had once dismissed as that girl from the poor neighborhood. A Forbes profile from 3 months earlier described her as the visionary reshaping how global business operates. The accompanying photo showed her in an elegant office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston Harbor, dressed in a designer suit that probably cost more than what he had once offered her to solve their problem. Marcus clicked through to images, finding countless photos of the triplets at various ages, receiving academic awards, participating in technology competitions, volunteering at community centers in Roxbury. In many photos, a handsome Asian American man appeared beside them, Daniel Park, according to the captions, architect, husband, father, the man who had raised Marcus's daughters. Sleep evaded him that night. By 7 the next morning, bleary-eyed and unshaven, he was on his third cup of coffee when his phone rang. The Reynolds Enterprises ringtone jolted him back to his immediate reality. "Marcus, the board has called an emergency meeting for 10 o'clock, his assistant informed him. "Gregory Winters says it's urgent." At 9:45, Marcus entered the Reynolds Enterprises conference room, having barely managed to shower and dress appropriately. The atmosphere struck him immediately. The tense expressions of board members, the unexpected presence of the company's legal team, the conspicuous empty chair at the head of the table where his father had once presided. "Marcus, please take a seat," said Gregory Winters, chairman of the board and his father's oldest friend. The lack of warmth in his tone suggested this wasn't a routine financial discussion. Once seated, Marcus noticed the folders before each board member, identical black leather portfolios embossed with the Washington Digital Solutions logo. "We received a notification of acquisition interest this morning," Gregory stated without preamble. "Washington Digital Solutions has offered to purchase Reynolds Enterprises." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. "That's absurd," he managed, attempting a dismissive laugh that sounded hollow even to his own ears. "We're a century-old financial institution. They're a tech startup." "A startup valued at $2.3 billion, corrected Harold Mitchell, the chief financial officer, "while our market value has declined to $380 million. Their offer is $450 million cash payment." "And you're actually considering this?" Marcus asked incredulously, looking around the table at faces he had known his entire life. Gregory sighed heavily. "With your minority shareholding after the divorce and your father's distribution of shares, you don't have veto power, Marcus. The majority of the board sees this as a lifeline. We've been losing relevance in the digital banking era." "This is my family's company," Marcus protested, his voice rising. "The Reynolds name has been synonymous with Boston finance for generations. And perhaps if you had focused more on innovation than on maintaining appearances, we wouldn't be in this position," remarked Eleanor Chambers, his father's former assistant who now held a board seat. "The acquisition proposal includes plans to integrate our existing client base into their fintech platform while maintaining the Reynolds name as a subsidiary brand. It's a graceful exit strategy." By 2 o'clock that afternoon, the official announcement had been made to the press. By 3, Marcus received an email from Jasmine herself. "Marcus, I trust this finds you well. As the new majority owner of Reynolds Enterprises, I would like to schedule a meeting to discuss the transition. Please meet me in the lobby of the Millennium Tower tomorrow at 3 p.m. Yes, the same lobby. Poetic justice. Wouldn't you agree? Regards, Jasmine Washington, CEO, Washington Digital Solutions." The following day, Marcus stood in the gleaming lobby where Jasmine had once worked as a receptionist. The space had been renovated since then, more minimalist, more modern, but the memories remained intact. At precisely 3 o'clock, the elevator doors opened and Jasmine emerged, accompanied by 2 executives and, to his shock, the triplets. "Mr. Reynolds, thank you for your punctuality," Jasmine greeted him with professional courtesy that contained not a hint of their personal history. "I thought this meeting would be an educational opportunity for my daughters to understand how corporate acquisitions function." Marcus could barely form words as they entered the elevator. The triplets observed him curiously, their identical analytical gazes seeming to dissect him. Madison held a tablet displaying what appeared to be financial projections. Brooklyn carried a notebook filled with neat handwriting. Olivia studied the architectural details of the elevator with an engineer's precision. The elevator ascended to the 60th floor, his former penthouse, now apparently owned by Washington Digital. The space had been completely transformed from the bachelor pad he had once maintained. Where there had once been modern art chosen by a decorator, there were now vibrant, abstract paintings. His imported Italian furniture had been replaced with sleek, collaborative workspaces. The view of Boston Harbor remained breathtaking, but it now framed a different story. "Let's begin," Jasmine said, gesturing toward the conference table that now occupied what had once been his living room. As outlined in the acquisition agreement, Washington Digital Solutions will be implementing a complete restructuring of Reynolds Enterprises. We'll be retaining approximately 30% of your current team, primarily client-facing roles to ensure continuity for existing customers. One of the executives, a sharp-featured woman introduced as Sonia Chen, Chief Integration Officer, continued, "The remaining operations will be converted to support our fintech division, with complete systems migration occurring over the next 6 months." As the executives detailed the transition plan, Marcus found himself watching the triplets, who had positioned themselves at the end of the table. They were taking notes, occasionally whispering to each other, clearly understanding every aspect of the complex corporate transaction. These weren't just smart kids, they were prodigies, his daughters. The daughters he had rejected. "And what about me?" Marcus finally asked when there was a pause in the presentation. Jasmine regarded him coolly. "We've considered 2 options for your position, Mr. Reynolds. I can accept your letter of resignation today with an appropriate severance package. Or you can remain as a consultant, reporting to our junior vice president of legacy operations." The humiliation of the second option was clear. From heir apparent of a financial dynasty to subordinate of a junior vice president, Marcus felt the triplets' eyes on him, studying his reaction. Jasmine was teaching them a master class in business negotiation and in consequences. When the others left the room for a scheduled break, Marcus found himself alone with Jasmine for the first time since the gala. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Is it revenge?" Jasmine considered the question thoughtfully, her finger tracing an invisible pattern on the conference table. "No, Marcus, it's business. Reynolds Enterprises is a strategic acquisition that complements our expansion into the financial sector. The fact that it was yours is merely a convenient coincidence. And the girls? They're my daughters. I have rights." Jasmine's expression hardened, the professional mask slipping for the first time. "You forfeited any rights 13 years ago when you offered me money to solve the problem. They have a father, a man who has been present for every recital, every doctor's appointment, every nightmare. Daniel loves them unconditionally, something you demonstrated you were incapable of." "They deserve to know the truth," Marcus insisted, "and they will when they turn 16. I promised myself I would tell them the whole story, not to punish them or you, but because they deserve their complete history." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to ensure they wouldn't be overheard. "But let me be absolutely clear. If you try to approach them before then, if you attempt to insert yourself into their lives without my consent, I will use every legal resource at my disposal to stop you." When the triplets returned with the executives, Jasmine immediately reverted to her professional demeanor. "So, Mr. Reynolds, what will your decision be? Resignation or demotion?" Marcus looked at the 3 girls who carried his DNA but owed him nothing, at the woman who had transformed rejection into empire, and at the papers before him signifying the end of his family's legacy. With trembling fingers, he reached for the resignation letter. That night, Marcus sat alone in his apartment, considerably smaller and less impressive than the mansion he had lost in the divorce. On his table lay the signed resignation letter beside an envelope containing his severance check. The amount was exactly what he had offered Jasmine 13 years earlier, adjusted for inflation. The symbolism wasn't lost on him. His phone rang. It was his attorney. "Marcus, I researched your paternal rights as you requested. The situation is complicated. You're not listed on the birth certificates, never acknowledged paternity, never contributed financially. The girls were legally adopted by Washington's husband 5 years ago. Frankly, your chances are minimal. After hanging up, Marcus opened his laptop and searched for more information about the triplets. He found articles about their extraordinary academic achievements, awards from mathematics and science Olympiads, the community assistance app they had developed at age 11. In every photo, Daniel Park appeared beside them, at father-daughter dances, at graduations, on family vacations. Meanwhile, in the comfortable Washington Park home in Chestnut Hill, Jasmine helped Brooklyn with a science project while Madison and Olivia played chess with Daniel on the porch. "Mom," Brooklyn said hesitantly, "that man today, Mr. Reynolds, he seemed strange, like he knew us." Jasmine chose her words carefully. "He's someone from my past, sweetheart. Someone who didn't believe in my potential." "He looked sad," Brooklyn observed. "Sometimes people only value what they've lost when it's too late," Jasmine replied, embracing her daughter. "But that's not our problem. We've moved forward, built our happiness." Daniel appeared in the doorway, smiling at his girls. "Who wants ice cream?" As the family gathered in the kitchen, laughing and debating flavors across town, Marcus Reynolds stared at the photo of the triplets on his computer screen. His finger traced the outline of the faces he would never truly know, the legacy he had rejected, the empire he could have shared, the daughters who called another man father. He closed the laptop and gazed at the illuminated city through his window. Jasmine hadn't needed revenge. Her best retribution had been building a life so extraordinary, so complete, that Marcus's absence hadn't left even a gap to be filled. At Reynolds Enterprises, now a subsidiary of Washington Digital Solutions, a cleaning crew removed Marcus's portrait from the executive gallery. Tomorrow, a new era would begin, under the leadership of the woman who was once considered worthless in that very building. Justice, Jasmine had discovered, didn't come from retaliation, but from ascension, not from destroying her oppressor, but from surpassing him so completely that his existence became irrelevant. The best revenge, after all, was living extraordinarily well. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows of the Millennium Tower, casting long shadows across the polished marble floors. Marcus stood in the lobby, watching the minute hand of his watch tick toward 3 o'clock. He had arrived 15 minutes early, a habit ingrained from years of power meetings where punctuality demonstrated control. Today, however, punctuality was his only remaining semblance of control. The elevator chimed, and Marcus looked up to see Jasmine emerging, flanked by 2 executives and, unexpectedly, all 3 triplets. The sight of them still caused a physical reaction, a tightening in his chest, a momentary shortness of breath. 13 years had passed since he had callously referred to them as 3 bastards that didn't fit into his 5-year plan. Now they stood before him, poised and brilliant, the living embodiment of his greatest miscalculation. "Mr. Reynolds," Jasmine greeted him with perfect professional courtesy. "Thank you for being prompt. We'll be meeting in the executive conference room upstairs." The elevator ride to the 60th floor, his former penthouse, felt interminable. Madison studied him with analytical precision, while Brooklyn observed the subtle dynamics between the adults. Olivia's attention remained on her tablet, though Marcus caught her glancing at him when she thought he wasn't looking. When the doors opened, Marcus barely recognized the space. What had once been his bachelor sanctuary had been transformed into a sleek corporate environment. Where his imported leather furniture had stood, there were now elegant conference tables and digital displays showing Washington Digital's global operations. "This way," Jasmine directed, leading them to the main conference room, formerly his bedroom. The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. The room where he had once entertained socialites and models was now where his professional execution would take place. Jasmine took her position at the head of the table, the triplets seated to her right, while the executives arranged themselves efficiently around the remaining seats. Marcus was left with a chair directly facing Jasmine, positioned so the morning sun through the windows hit his eyes while leaving her in perfect commanding shadow. Following yesterday's formalization of the acquisition, Jasmine began, "We need to discuss your transition options, Mr. Reynolds. Washington Digital Solutions has prepared two distinct pathways forward." The Chief Human Resources Officer, a woman named Priya Sharma, slid two folders across the polished table. Option 1 is a resignation package with 6 months severance, health benefits continuation, and appropriate references for future employment. Option 2 is a consultancy position within our Legacy Operations Division, reporting to Vice President Michaels. Marcus opened the first folder. The severance check amount caused his breath to catch. Exactly $125,000, the precise sum he had offered Jasmine 13 years ago to solve their problem, adjusted for inflation. He looked up to find her watching him, her expression revealing nothing but her message crystal clear. "The consultancy role," Marcus began, his voice uncharacteristically thin. "What would that entail?" "You would advise our integration team on Reynolds' client relationships," explained the second executive, "helping ensure smooth transition of high-net-worth accounts to our platform. The position carries a modest salary compared to your previous compensation, of course." Marcus understood the subtext. The position was designed to be humiliating. The former heir apparent reduced to hand-holding nervous clients through a transition that spelled the end of his family's legacy. As he weighed these equally unpalatable options, the conference room door opened unexpectedly. A young man entered, looking momentarily flustered. "I apologize for interrupting," he said. "Ms. Washington, you asked me to notify you when it was time for the educational component." Jasmine checked her watch. "Thank you, Ryan. Right on schedule." She turned to the triplets. "Girls, this is the perfect opportunity for your business acquisition practicum. Mr. Reynolds has received our transition options, and now we'll be discussing the integration strategy for the Reynolds client portfolio." The triplets immediately opened their tablets, shifting from passive observers to active participants. Madison pulled up complex financial projections that Marcus recognized as Reynolds Enterprises client asset allocations, information that should have been highly confidential. For optimal integration, Madison began with the confidence of a seasoned analyst. "We've segmented the client base into 4 tiers based on total assets under management and relationship complexity." Marcus watched in astonishment as his 13-year-old daughter, a daughter he had never acknowledged, delivered a flawless analysis of his company's client portfolio, identifying weaknesses he himself had missed. Brooklyn followed with a detailed implementation timeline. The migration should proceed in phases, beginning with the Tier 4 clients who represent minimal flight risk, then proceeding to higher tiers as successful case studies are established. "Our risk assessment model," Olivia added, pulling up a complex algorithm visualization, "predicts a 93.7% retention rate if we follow this strategy, compared to industry standard 78% during similar acquisitions." Marcus couldn't tear his eyes away. These girls, his flesh and blood, possessed a business acuity that far surpassed what he had demonstrated at twice their age. Had he not rejected them? Had he embraced fatherhood and supported Jasmine? Would he have been part of nurturing this extraordinary talent? Would Reynolds Enterprises be thriving under such visionary guidance rather than being dismantled by it? "An interesting observation," Brooklyn noted, studying a particular data set. "The company began its significant decline approximately when we were born, a telling correlation." The comment landed like a precision strike, though Brooklyn's tone suggested nothing beyond analytical curiosity. Marcus glanced at Jasmine, whose expression remained neutral but whose eyes reflected a momentary flash of something. Pride, vindication, or perhaps a recognition of the perfect symmetry of this moment. When the triplets concluded their presentation, Jasmine dismissed them to join Ryan for a tour of the operations center, leaving Marcus alone with her and the executives. As the door closed behind the girls, Marcus finally found his voice. You orchestrated this perfectly, the complete humiliation." To his surprise, instead of triumph, Jasmine's expression softened slightly. "This wasn't about humiliation, Marcus. It was about closure. For me, and eventually for them." She gestured for the executives to leave, and for the first time since the gala, they were truly alone. The silence between them held 13 years of unspoken history. "They're extraordinary," Marcus said finally. "Their intelligence, their poise." "Yes, they are," Jasmine agreed, her pride evident. "They've never known limitation or doubt, only possibility and support." "Will they ever know about me?" The question emerged barely above a whisper. Jasmine considered him for a long moment. "When they turn 16, I'll tell them everything. Who you are, what happened between us, all of it. If they want to know you then, that will be their choice to make." 3 years, Marcus calculated. "Yes, 3 years during which I expect you to respect our boundaries completely. No contact, no accidental meetings, nothing." Marcus nodded slowly, the reality of his situation sinking in fully. "And if I choose resignation rather than the consultant position?" "The same terms apply regarding the girls," Jasmine replied. "As for your professional future, that would be entirely your concern." Marcus stared out the window at the Boston skyline, the city where his family had wielded influence for generations, where the Reynolds name had opened doors and commanded respect. Now that name would become a subsidiary footnote in the Washington digital empire. "I was a fool," he admitted, the words emerging with surprising ease. "An arrogant, entitled fool who threw away what could have been the best part of my life." "Yes," Jasmine agreed simply, neither cruel nor comforting. "You were." Marcus signed the resignation letter with a sense of finality. As he slid it across the table, Jasmine reached into her portfolio and removed a business card, pushing it toward him. "What's this?" he asked. "The contact information for Dr. Elena Ramirez. She runs a mentoring program for underprivileged youth interested in finance. If you're looking for redemption, perhaps start by helping those who lack the advantages you've always taken for granted." The gesture wasn't what Marcus had expected, not forgiveness, certainly, but perhaps a tiny doorway towards something like atonement. Jasmine stood, signaling the end of their meeting. "Life rarely offers second chances, Mr. Reynolds, but sometimes it offers new paths. What you do with yours is entirely up to you." As Marcus rode the elevator down, he felt lighter than he had in years, not with joy, but with the peculiar weightlessness that comes from having everything stripped away. The family name, the corporate position, the social standing, all the external trappings he had valued above a young woman's dignity, and 3 new lives. Outside the building, he paused to look up at the towering glass structure. Somewhere near the top, 3 brilliant girls were learning the intricacies of corporate acquisition from the mother who had raised them to be extraordinary, and from the father who had chosen to love them when their biological father had failed them. 3 days later, Marcus stood outside a weathered community center in Dorchester. The business card Jasmine had given him was creased from repeated handling. After a moment's hesitation, he pushed open the door and stepped inside. "Mr. Reynolds?" A woman with silver-streaked hair approached, hand extended. "I'm Elena Ramirez. Jasmine mentioned you might be coming." "Yes, I'd like to help, if I can." Dr. Ramirez studied him skeptically. "Our students need committed mentors, not wealthy people seeking to ease their conscience with charity work." "I understand," Marcus replied. "I've recently learned some difficult lessons about privilege and responsibility. I have knowledge that might benefit these students, and perhaps they have wisdom I need to learn." The doctor's expression softened slightly. "We have a financial literacy class starting in 20 minutes. You can observe today, perhaps participate next week if it seems a good fit." As Marcus followed her into a classroom where teenagers from Boston's underserved communities gathered with notebooks and determined expressions, he felt a strange sense of rightness. This would not redeem his past failures, but perhaps it offered a way forward. Meanwhile, in the Washington Park home, Jasmine sat in the garden watching her three daughters analyze the chess match Daniel had set up for them. The late afternoon sun caught the diamond on her wedding ring, sending prisms of light dancing across the patio. Brooklyn looked up from the board. "Mom, did you know that man from before? Mr. Reynolds?" "Yes, sweetheart. He's part of a story I'll tell you when you're a bit older." "He seemed sad," Brooklyn observed, "like someone who lost something important and only realized it too late." Jasmine smiled gently at her perceptive daughter. "That's very insightful, Brooklyn. Sometimes the choices we make have consequences we don't fully understand until years later." Daniel called from the kitchen doorway, "Who wants homemade pizza for dinner?" As the girls raced inside, Jasmine remained momentarily in the garden, contemplating how completely her life had transformed since that snowy night 13 years ago. She had promised her unborn daughters that she would turn rejection into revolution, that she would prove Marcus wrong about everything. Looking at the empire she had built, the daughters she had raised, and the peace she had finally found, Jasmine Washington knew she had fulfilled that promise beyond anything she could have imagined possible. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen.